Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your sources, really dig in, and pull out the key insights, the surprising facts. Think of it like a shortcut, to get you well informed without all the overwhelm. So today, we're tackling some big modern challenges, and maybe more importantly, looking for practical ways towards a more meaningful future. We're leaning quite a bit on Jamie Wheal's book, Recapture the Rapture.
Yeah, we're setting the stage to explore why the world feels so broken for so many of us and how we're trying to cope, or maybe not coping so well, and what actual tools might help us not just, survive, but really thrive.
Exactly. And this deep dive, it's really designed to help you cut through all that noise, that flood of information,
Yeah.
help you see the patterns underneath, connect some dots, and crucially find things you can actually do to move past the anxiety, the apathy. I'm going to dig into this meaning crisis people talk about, and this really compelling idea of, recapturing our own rapture. How do we do that? Maybe through some tangible, even surprising methods. Okay, so let's start with that phrase, Rapture Ideologies. It's a potent idea. The sources, they basically share four core beliefs. One, the world, it's broken, unsavable. Two, a huge change is coming, and soon. Three, after that change, our people, the valued ones, we get saved, redeemed. And four, let's just get there fast, forget what we leave behind. What's really wild is seeing how these pop up everywhere now, not just like in church.
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating where you see echoes of this. Think about Elon Musk or the late Stephen Hawking talking about Mars colonization. They framed it as, humanity's lifeboat. Our only hope as Earth gets, used up, Musk literally said it's the best hope to ensure the future of our species. Hawking agreed, saying spreading out may be the only thing that saves us. But when we hear that, instead of huge debate,
Yeah.
our critical thinking kind of goes soft. It's like science fiction, Star Trek, or the Jetsons. It makes us just gloss over the how, makes these massive radical ideas feel almost normal. Cool, even.
Right, that's one kind of escape pod. But then there's the other flavor, the super rich prepping for doomsday. Evan Osnos wrote that piece in The New Yorker, Doomsday Prep for the Super Rich. Caused a big stir. It's basically survivalism, but, with way more money. Trading Mars for missile silos, fancy ranches. Same underlying idea, though.
And the source points out this chilling code word they use, the event. Just a placeholder for whatever horror show they imagine, climate collapse, civil unrest, nuclear war, a pandemic.
Wow, the event.
Yeah, and it makes you stop and think, right, but why aren't these incredibly powerful people asking, how do we stop the event?
No, the question they're obsessed with is, how do I keep control of my security team after the event?
Seriously.
It just reveals this deep-seated belief that collapse is inevitable. It's all about saving themselves. It's pretty striking. So what's the big picture takeaway here? All these escape narratives, Mars, bunkers, whatever, they're seductive, right? The golden ticket. But the source pulls us back to something simpler, maybe more profound. This shared basic human thing, wanting peace, wanting our kids to thrive, wanting to, die in their sleep, happy and surrounded by grandchildren. That desire, it cuts across everything. Atheists, Muslims, Christians, hipsters. It's this common ground beneath the noise, a grounding force. Okay, there's this paradox the source highlights, and it's deeply unsettling. On the one hand, things are undoubtedly getting exponentially better. Tech, progress, amazing stuff.
Right.
But then the flip side, things are undoubtedly getting exponentially worse.
Yeah.
The fires are to Amazon, pandemics, refugees, populism, terrorism, sexism, racism, all the isms.
Yeah.
And living with both those realities at once, that creates this intense cognitive dissonance, this constant clash inside.
And that clash, it ties directly into what the source calls the collapse of benign and divine authority. It's not just buildings like the Twin Towers or Notre Dame falling. It's trust. Trust in the institutions we thought were solid. Think about finance. The 2008 crash. Michael Lewis's book, The Big Short, just laid it bare. Self-dealing, foreknowledge, and disregard at huge firms like Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel economist, he put it bluntly. Neoliberalism has undermined democracy for 40 years. Growth slowed, and the fruits went overwhelmingly to a very few at the top.
Yeah.
And it's not just finance. Look at Silicon Valley. It went from don't be evil to, what looks like indifference.
Right.
Facebook, the political ads controversy, the mass staff walkouts in 2020 because Zuckerberg seemed indifferent.
Right.
The New York Times even ran a piece called Silicon Valley Goes to Therapy. Tech workers feeling this increasing queasiness about ethics. Even medicine took a hit. The opioid crisis. Doctors grossly overprescribing things like OxyContin. One pharmacy prescribed 9 million pills to a town of 400 people. while Purdue Pharma made billions. It erodes trust deeply.
And that erosion reaches right into faith, too. You had the four horsemen of the new atheism cheering the end of faith. And yeah, for decades, religious belief did decline sharply in the U.S. and Western Europe. But here's the rub. Secularism, what the source calls meaning 2.0, it hasn't really filled that gap, has it?
No, it hasn't. Jonathan Haidt at NYU nails it. He says, humans, we have a need, we have a hole in our heart. It needs to be filled by something. If you don't have that sense of the sacred, religious, or otherwise, you end up with anomie, normlessness, loneliness, hopelessness. And that vacuum, it pushes people to extremes. They'll grab onto anything that feels like meaning.
Okay, let's pause on this for a second. Our recent history, like the last few generations in America, it's kind of an anomaly. We've lived in a relative bubble, which makes it really hard to find reference points for the kinds of crises we're facing now. Our grandparents, great-grandparents. They built resilience between world wars and the Depression. They learned about thrift, tough times. The source kind of implies, if Grandma and Grandpa could pull it off, so can we. There is a map, lessons learned.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it really suggests that our lack of historical context, that bubble, makes us feel more overwhelmed. It short-circuits our ability to step up to the occasion, climate change, global politics, this meaning crisis. The problems feel impossibly huge because we don't have those older maps. We feel unequipped.
Which maybe leads us to this next point from the source. A pretty stark one. Left to our own devices, we regress under stress. And then, put simply, tribalism is destiny. Humanism is optional.
Right.
That helps explain a lot about the rise of identity politics we see everywhere.
It's fascinating how deep that tribal instinct runs. The evolutionary instinct to bond with and protect those who look, smell, and talk like us. That's ancient wiring, foundational for survival. But cooperating beyond your tribe, your kin group, that's incredibly recent in historical terms and fragile.
Fragile.
And it's that very fragility that gets exploited so easily today.
And digging into that, the source makes this really provocative claim. It says, alt-right neo-Nazis actually have more in common with far-left radicals than either would be willing to admit. Because fundamentally, both groups share a goal. Smash the system and stick it to their enemies. It's less about the what and more about the smash, the destructive impulse.
Which makes you ask, okay, how do movements that maybe start with good intentions get hijacked?
Yeah.
The source points to studies suggesting that these emerging political attitudes, both radical left and alt-right, often attract people high in the dark triad traits.
The triad.
Yeah. Psychopathy, callousness, narcissism, inflated self-importance, and Machiavellianism, manipulative cunning. Mix that with entitlement, and you get an update on Yeats. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with a passionate intensity. Even noble ideas can be captured by sociopaths, like Robespierre twisting French Revolution ideals into the Reign of Terror.
So, stepping back, what's the takeaway? The cynicism out there is deep. It's tempting to just say, tear it all down.
Right.
But maybe searching for common ground is, well, maybe it's not the whole picture right now. The source suggests looking for higher ground instead.
Higher ground.
Yeah, a place where we can hold, bridge, balance values that are genuinely in conflict but still important, like family and work, solidarity and autonomy, finding a framework for complexity, not just simple answers. Okay, so if tribalism is the default, how do we expand? How do we get beyond our little groups, our borders? The source brings up the overview effect that astronauts talk about.
Yeah.
Neil Armstrong, looking back at Earth, seeing this tiny pea, pretty and blue, putting his thumb up, blotting out the whole planet. He said, I didn't feel like a giant. I felt very, very small. And Abdul Ahad Moman, Afghanistan's first astronaut, he called for peace from orbit, saying people, especially Afghans, didn't need this war. That perspective shift.
It is powerful, hugely inspiring. Yeah. But let's be real. Becoming an astronaut is a small batch solution.
Right. Very small batch.
So the real question is, how do the rest of us get whatever it was they were having? How do we get that perspective shift?
Yeah.
The source hints that maybe encountering cosmic otherness can bring people together. It cites this pretty weird study on racial bias.
Okay.
Where white homeowners in conservative areas, if they thought they'd had some kind of otherworldly experience, actually used less negative language towards visitors of color afterwards.
Huh. That's unexpected.
Strange connection, right.
But compelling.
And that leads into exploring these non-ordinary states of consciousness, like the research at Johns Hopkins. They started cautiously, psilocybin for smoking cessation. Now, they're openly asking study participants about contacting entities, angelic beings, machine elves, greys, giant praying mantises. Like, whoa, they're going there.
And Imperial College in London, they're looking into precognition, remote viewing, trying to test if we can access information beyond space and time, seriously mapping the mystical. Okay, so if we're facing this existential dread, this isolation, we need tools, practical stuff. The source talks about Meaning 3.0, built on 3 pillars: inspiration, healing, and connection.
Inspiration, healing, connection. Okay.
Or you could call it beyond becoming and belonging.
Yeah.
Or even ecstasis, catharsis, communitas. And critically, it needs to be open source, scalable, and anti-fragile.
Right, not locked down.
The core idea, hedonic engineering. Using our own biology as the lever, the longest lever, to shift things.
Okay, hedonic engineering. Let's unpack the toolkit, the alchemist cookbook, as the source calls it. Starting simple, respiration, just breathing. But it has huge effects, like nasal breathing. Scientists in Sweden found it gives you 15–30% better oxygenation. And it boosts nitric oxide, especially if you vibrate the nasal cavity like didgeridoo players. Up to 15 times more. Nitric oxide, that molecule Herbert Benson at Harvard studied. It calms us, triggers endorphins, dopamine, helps us hit peak states.
Just from breathing differently.
Yeah. And freedivers use breath holds for flow states. There's also this idea of the Goldilocks zone of CO2 from Budeko's research finding the right balance for health, and even using carbogen, a CO2 mix, for big physiological shifts.
But here's where it gets really interesting. William James, the psychologist, back in the 1870s, deep depression,
Right.
he tried nitrous oxide laughing gas, found it instantly illuminating, pulled him out of despair, turned him into a rational mystic, his words.
Nitrous.
Yeah. Apparently, it knocks out conscious processing, accelerates pattern recognition, and boosts the signal of how fast we can think. A reliable way beyond just placebo effect.
And then there's the really counterintuitive stuff.
Yeah.
Pain and suffering linked to healing. The source mentions first responders with survivor's guilt after disasters, using concerted beatings from professional dominatrixes, finding it curative, allowing them to process the trauma, earn the right to be happy.
Whoa, that's intense.
Very. Or the penitentes in New Mexico, reenacting Christ's passion with self-flagellation, even symbolic crucifixion. It seems humans are unique, discovering you can sort of hotwire pain to experience pleasure and even healing.
Okay, that's definitely jarring. Does the source explain why something so seemingly, well, violent works? How is it not just more harm?
Yeah, it touches on that. The idea is it's a deliberate, controlled way to create a physiological release valve for overwhelming emotional pain or guilt. It's not about random harm, but a consensual confrontation with intense discomfort that leads to catharsis, something talk therapy might not reach.
Okay, a release valve.
And this ties into our neurochemistry, our sexuality. The source even uses the provocative term horned ape hypothesis.
Horned ape.
Yeah, suggesting our biology is just wired for these kinds of profound, sometimes intense experiences. Think about the endocannabinoid system, the ECS. It's huge, regulates almost everything: pain, mood, sleep, bonding. It produces an andamide, the bliss molecule. The source mentions things like the super-O from prostate stimulation leading to euphoric states, and points out that romantic love is a natural and often positive addiction. It's baked in, which leads to this crucial question. If our biology, our sexuality, is linked to consciousness and well-being, can we intentionally engineer positive states? And maybe just as important, how do we do that ethically, avoid commodifying it?
Right at the pitfalls.
The source looks at things like love drugs, biochemical tools. MDMA therapy for PTSD is a prime example. It boosts serotonin, oxytocin, reduces fear, increases trust, helps people revisit trauma safely, rewire those circuits. And Nicole Praz's research trying to validate orgasm as prescription for things like anxiety, depression, use it on chemistry.
And then music, collective resonance. Think Queen, We Will Rock You.
Comp, stomp, clap.
Exactly. Brian May realizing that audience participation felt ancient.
Yeah.
Daniel Levitin, the neuroscientist, says for most of history, music making was like breathing or walking. Everyone did it. It built group togetherness and synchrony, helped people transcend themselves in trance states. Music is this exquisite orchestration of brain regions, this precision choreography of neurochemical release. The Grateful Dead shows. described as modern-day Dionysian rituals, an electric kinetic liturgy, even Gnostic initiation.
Okay.
It's the Arcana Americana, a soundtrack for the infinite game. Okay, so pulling these threads together, the source maps this out visually in the hedonic engineering matrix. It categorizes things. Mild, medium, spicy interventions, targeting neurochemicals like nitric oxide, oxytocin, psychoactives, using practices like respiration, trauma therapy.
Oh, man.
And the goal isn't just one perfect state. It's about achieving range, rebound, and resilience, learning to tweak your inner dials for whatever's needed, building that versatile toolkit.
Right. And while any single tool can work breath, body work, music, substances, sex, the source describes this protocol, the sexual yoga of becoming, that tries to combine many of them.
Sexual yoga of becoming.
Yeah. It involves flooding the body with neurochemicals, endorphins, oxytocin, optimizing the endocannabinoid system, and training brain waves, resetting the brainstem, maybe with nitrous or ketamine, pulsing energy, specific breathing, powerful music, all together.
That sounds intense.
The goal is basically experimental revelation, direct experience.
But crucially, there are big warnings here too, right? The study mentioned it wasn't all smooth sailing. Some people dropped out, faced uncomfortable emotional and relational content. One woman worried about addiction jokingly compared herself to Charlotte in Sex and the City with her vibrator, but then got seriously concerned about her priorities. It's a warning against spiritual bypassing, just chasing highs without doing the work. Or excessive, unstructured use leading to superego's inflated ego, not transcendence. They become placebo sacraments if they don't lead to real, embodied, first and second person immersion. So the really deep challenge here seems to be building communitas without the cult.
Ooh, yeah. That's tricky.
How do you combine these powerful peak experiences, the deep healing, into strong connections without falling into hedonism, commodification, or worse, weaponization?
It's a huge challenge. Think about cargo cults. The rituals continue even when the planes don't land. The cargo never comes. The group organizes around purer faith and ritual itself. It makes you wonder, are we just repeating those patterns? The source points to a potential wisdom gap. Millennials assuming their discoveries are totally new. Maybe put it right in the same ditch as earlier generations, not learning from history's mistakes.
Which leads right into charismatic leaders and cult dynamics. When our internal senses, our interoception are off the charts during these intense states, our judgment can get fuzzy.
Yeah, easily.
And there's the Jonah complex. We fear our own potential, our own greatness, so we give away our gold, project our power onto a guru.
And weaponization is a serious risk. How cults often control these very techniques: drugs, sex, breathwork, music, healing. They tightly manage access. Any insights that don't fit the leader's narrative, suppressed.
How do you even spot that?
It's tough. Because often, many cult-like communities will initially present with palpable energy, enthusiasm, and growth. They're using powerful tools. And those talented but tainted leaders, they often did have genuine gifts initially, but they buy into their followers' projections, that golden shadow, start believing their own hype, become infallible. Think Robespierre again.
Okay, so how do we navigate all this? Make sense of it when the old maps are gone? The source offers a kind of sturdy triangle for post-conventional metaphysics, frameworks for truth-seeking.
Okay, what are they?
Pascal's wager, the rational bet on belief. Occam's razor's simplest explanation is often best. And Bayesian probability, updating beliefs with new evidence.
Practical tools for uncertainty.
Exactly. Not absolute answers, but ways to navigate with more humility.
Which makes me think, okay, say we use these tools, we get 80% awoken. Then what? The source suggests not endlessly chasing that last 20%, the long tail of our imagined perfectibility.
So don't get stuck striving.
Right. Instead, use that initial awakening, that spark, to go DIT, go help out. Focus where your trauma meets your talent, the intersection of our trauma and our talent, where you feel the world's wound most and have skills to offer.
It frames sacraments, old or new, not as the destination, but as tools. Preparation, like a musician learning to play on time and in tune, or a cyclist learning balance. These experiences get us back into balance, sharpen our skills, so we can then go out and explore the world, get back in the game.
And it emphasizes the power of our stories. Our sacred stories bond us together, inspire us to do better, and heal us when we need it most. Think about the Jesus meme, not in a dismissive way, but the idea of Jesus in all its forms, how profoundly it shaped the last 2 millennia. And the idea of grace and grit, Those Japanese concepts, wabi-sabi finding beauty in imperfection, in flaws, and kintsugi mending broken pottery with gold lacquer, making the cracks beautiful, highlighting the light getting in through the cracks.
That connects to that really inspiring vision from Teilhard de Chardin, the paleontologist priest.
Ah, yes.
His idea of evolution moving towards an omega point, a culmination of consciousness, humanity becoming a single great superhuman being within the new sphere, the sphere of thought. It's a huge, hopeful vision of collective growth.
And there's the contrast between Kairos and Chronos.
Right. Kairos is that sacred, timeless moment, the deep now. Chronos is just clock time, linear, ticking
The
seconds.
Source uses this incredibly intense phrase to capture holding both life's agony and ecstasy, the blissfuck crucifixion,
Wow, okay.
meaning the agony and the ecstasy, both, forever, accepting the whole paradox, that we're never fully fixed, we're never totally broken. Like Dolly Parton says, right? Ain't no saint without a past or no sinner without a future.
So boiling it down, what's the core message for you, the listener? Instead of the old model mystic goes away, comes back with the truth for everyone.
Top-down revelation.
The source argues for reverse engineering revelation, sharing the methods that reliably trigger belief, insight, connection, so everyone can make up their own minds and hearts.
Democratizing nirvana.
Exactly, making those death-rare birth rituals physiological, embodied, not just metaphors. Peak states ultimately just sharpen our senses to see the magic already here.
And connecting that to our lives, it's about cultivating our mythic lives.
Yeah.
But also realizing when you have a breakthrough, come back feeling like a new me, your loved ones might resist.
Yeah. Why?
They might not trust the change until you acknowledge, maybe even atone for, the old me, the parts you're leaving behind.
Integration.
Exactly. It's about building this positive feedback loop, this flywheel of peak states, healing, and connection. But understanding no cutting corners, there's no skipping steps, it's ongoing work.
So this deep dive really shows, yeah, the challenges we're facing are huge, immense. But maybe the tools, the pathways available to us are just as immense. We've gone from cosmic awe to the nitty-gritty of neurochemistry, breath, pain, sex, music, all pointing towards reconnecting to ourselves, to each other in ways that feel real, meaningful.
Yeah, the path isn't about checking out, escaping the world. It's the opposite. It's about engaging more fully, using our deepest biology, our evolutionary inheritance for what the Source calls radical hope. Remembering that the keys to our cage are also the keys to the kingdom. And maybe the most liberating part, our prison is unlocked.
And we need that radical hope, as the Source says, to face the full catastrophe of the human condition. That's a powerful call to action.
So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. If our grandparents' generation forged resilience between world wars and the Depression, what unique kind of strength, what kind of lowercase air rapture is this era, this crazy, overwhelming intertwingularity going to forge in us, and how might that change everything?
That's it for this deep dive. Stay awake, build stuff, help out.